Another day, another story. I'm not sure if this is the right place to share. But I can't think of anywhere else to post this. For those who remember me, I'm the guy whose wife had our kids release a wild bunny in the yard, even though I suggested they take it to the bushes for a safe release. A hawk swooped down and took the money right in front of our young children. 4 and 5 years old at the time. They got upset with their mom and ran back to me in tears. Our kids started calling her the Bunny Destroyer. That nickname now feels fitting. And others called her that too once her affair became known. The bunny incident seems like ancient history compared to what I have to share now. I'm speaking as a free man after finalizing the divorce a couple of months ago. This is going to be a long and complex story. So get ready. I did show my wife my original post, and she was furious with me. In fact, it led to a big fight between us. After that, she gave me the silent treatment for a week. I made efforts to stop my kids from mistreating their mother after the bunny incident, even using small punishments, like grounding and timeouts. The BK nickname kept resurfacing whenever our kids got angry with their mom. After a few weeks, my wife stopped giving me the cold shoulder treatment and admitted that she should have listened to me about the bunny and taken it to the bushes like I suggested. She explained that she felt the need to defend herself and avoid being wrong. I accepted her apology and also apologized for posting about it on Reddit. I suggested marriage counseling, but she declined, acting like our marriage was fine. I decided not to push the matter further since things seemed to be improving. However, a few weeks later, my oldest child approached me wanting to share something. She had an additional reason for being upset with her mom beyond the bunny incident, but she was afraid to tell me. I reassured her and told her she could confide in me. What she revealed shocked me and instantly changed everything. She told me that for months, Mom had been bringing a man over on some Saturdays when I was at work. Mom referred to him as her special friend. She convinced our kids to stay quiet about it using various forms of persuasion, but my eldest started sensing that something was very wrong, and she mustered the courage to tell me. Children are perceptive and grasp things quickly, a fact that shouldn't be ignored. I had noticed my wife's recent change in behavior. She had been more irritable, especially toward the kids. I tried discussing it with her when I showed her my initial post, but she lashed out at me about anything she could think of. She insulted my looks, my personality, my habits, and even my family. She even brought up my past smoking, which I quit over a decade ago. She went as far as locking me out of our bedroom and crying loudly throughout the house. So when my oldest child approached me, I began to connect the dots. I realized she was having an affair and her actions resembled the mood swings she had during her pregnancies with our kids. I say resembled because this time it was even worse. Based on my online research and discussions with friends and a counselor, it seems like her moodiness could be due to hormones and projecting because of her infidelity. I'm no psychology expert, but it does make sense. I wished it was all a misunderstanding, but I quickly ordered and set up a few hidden cameras without anyone at home knowing to keep it secret. I had them delivered to my workplace. Then I installed them on a day when my wife was out with her friends for a girls' night. Setting up and connecting the cameras to the Wi-Fi was a breeze. Within just a few hours, I could keep an eye on every part of the house from my home PC, laptop, and work PC. Initially, I had concerns that I might be going too far. I reasoned that if I turned out to be mistaken, I could simply take down the cameras and no one would be the wiser. However, my worst suspicions were confirmed within the first week as I gathered substantial evidence. The man my wife is having an affair with used to be her co-worker. I remembered him clearly as they appeared close whenever I encountered him at different events. Several years ago, my wife quit her job to be a full-time mother after becoming pregnant with our first child. The decision was mutual for both of us at the time. She remained in touch with her former colleagues who were also her closest friends back then. But things have changed drastically. What I'm about to reveal has caused her to be strongly disliked by everyone. Firstly, her affair partner, AP, is younger than her by about 10 years. She mentored him at her previous job to take over her position when she left, and they continued to maintain a close connection. A very close connection. Despite both my wife and I being over 40, you wouldn't guess it from looking at her. She's exceptionally attractive and often mistaken for someone in their 20s. It seems she took advantage of that perception. I ended up confiding in my sister about the situation and showed her the video from the nanny cams. She had actually suspected something was amiss for a while. She mentioned seeing my wife at a local bar acting a bit too familiar with a man who wasn't me. However, they never kissed or did anything overt while she was observing. There was a lot of touching on the shoulders and lower back. Since she wasn't entirely certain, she didn't bring it up earlier, I decided to get a GPS tracker as well. Once I got it up and running, I discreetly placed it in trunk of my wife's car. My sister and her husband agreed to assist me and tracked the GPS device on my wife's next planned night out with friends. Interestingly, she went to a completely different location about 20 miles farther away than her usual spot. From there, she met up with her affair partner, App. My sister and brother-in-law observed their interactions from their car, noting that App was frequently touching her belly while they conversed. They even managed to record a video of this. Upon watching the footage, I strongly suspected she was pregnant with his child. Especially given her moody behavior at home. I was in such a state of distress that my sister and brother-in-law had to console me. I had an impulse to drown my sorrows with alcohol, but my sister wisely advised me against it, recognizing it as the worst course of action at that moment. I later decided to take some time off work, but told my wife that I was going on a business trip. Her reaction was oddly enthusiastic, and she didn't put much effort into hiding her excitement that I'd be away for a while. Who is this person? She's definitely not the woman I married almost 20 years ago, right? Could someone who looks just like her have replaced her one day? Is she some kind of alien posing as a human? Did I ever truly understand her? The more I dwelled on it, the less it made sense. So in the end, I realized that trying to make sense of everything wouldn't benefit me. I had cameras installed all around the house. My sister and brother-in-law agreed to have my kids over for a few days since they enjoy visiting their aunt and uncle in the city. This created the perfect opportunity for my wife. She called up her affair partner App just hours after I left, and he came over that evening to spend the night. I won't go into explicit detail about their activities around the house. You can fill in those blanks yourselves. However, on top of everything else, they were making jokes at my expense. They openly discussed their future child, deliberating on what steps to take before her pregnancy became obvious. She was already more than 3 months along by that point. So it was clear that passing it off as mine wouldn't be possible. App comes from a different racial background than me. So it'd be pretty obvious right from birth that the baby wouldn't be mine. My wife didn't take AP's concern seriously and told him they had plenty of time to work things out. Then shamelessly, she admitted this wasn't her first affair. She confessed to sleeping with another man when she was 29. She told App that she was fed up with having to play the role of a good housewife and being with a dull man like me who made her feel old. She even mentioned that if I wasn't financially stable, she would have left me long ago. Surprisingly, even her affair partner questioned her about our kids and her plan for them. Her exact response was he can have them. She didn't want to be around our kids anymore because she believed they preferred me. Besides, she was about to have her do-over baby anyway. I was almost tempted to throw my laptop on the floor in my motel room because of the disgust I felt. However, I managed to control myself. I had a few beers from a six-pack, grabbed dinner at a diner, watched a movie, and spent a good part of the night in bed thinking before finally falling asleep. I thought I knew my wife inside out. I loved her and was willing to give her everything. But in the end, some people are simply wicked. You can never truly understand who they are until they reveal their true nature. In that moment, I resolved to take her down in our divorce proceedings. Usually, I'm a very kind and composed man. However, if you manage to push me to my limits, I can turn into your worst nightmare. The very next day, I visited a law firm specializing in divorce cases and specifically asked for the most aggressive lawyer they had. I live in a state where fault is considered in divorce cases. So the moment I had evidence of my wife's affair on camera, her situation was dire. At first, the lawyer was a bit cautious about my swift decision to hire him. But when I elaborated on my circumstances, showed him some video footage, he grinned devilishly, and we sealed the deal with a handshake. He assured me he'd start working on it immediately since this was the kind of case divorce lawyers thrive on. A few weeks later, I had my wife officially served with divorce papers. It happened on a day when I was working from home and the kids were at school. Our eldest was in kindergarten, and the youngest was in preschool. The papers were handed directly to my wife by the local sheriff. And all of this was captured on the cameras I had set up. The footage showed her opening the envelope with a look of fear, reading its contents and then losing her composure. She stormed into my office to unleash her anger, but I maintained my cool and calm demeanor throughout. By then, I had mentally checked out of our marriage completely. While my wife wanted to argue, I simply informed her that I had made up my mind and wanted her out of my house. I'm the sole contributor to the mortgage payments. She yelled at me, insisting that I can't proceed with this. She even went so far as to threaten that she'd fabricate stories of me beating her and try to get me fired from my job if I took her to court. I responded by telling her to go ahead and create any falsehood she wished, but it wouldn't help her situation. It's not like she wasn't already planning to deceive me, given that she's carrying her affair partner's child. When I mentioned this, she looked shocked and questioned how much I knew. I calmly stated that I had enough information, reiterating my desire for her to leave. She resisted, asserting that the house belonged to her as much as it did to me, and then retreated to the bedroom, locking herself inside. From the bedroom cameras, I could see her having an emotional breakdown. She eventually dialed the police on her phone. Despite her appearing to be in a state of panic, I noticed a significant smile on her face as she made the call. She was quite the actress. I might have believed that performance over the phone if I hadn't already been aware of her tendency to lie. I waited for the police front door wide open and directed them to enter upon their arrival. Initially, they seemed prepared for a confrontational situation. However, the house was in order, and there were no signs of any altercation. Suddenly, my wife emerged from the bedroom clutching the vest of one of the officers, tearfully labeling me as a maniac. I requested another officer to let me present evidence of the actual situation, and he agreed. This took my wife by surprise, as she had no idea I had recorded her actions. Using a laptop, I showed the officer footage from the cameras revealing my wife stating her intention to fabricate damaging stories about me. I proceeded to show footage from the living room, following her exit from my office, up to the moment she entered the master bedroom. Then I displayed footage from the bedroom camera capturing her call to the police while providing false information. I had documented everything from multiple angles. Despite her allegations to the police about me assaulting her, there were no visible marks on her body. And the cameras throughout the house presented a completely different narrative. Afterwards, I handed a thumb drive to the police explaining that it contained all the necessary video footage showing my wife's false claims when calling them. Despite the overwhelming evidence, my wife remained committed to her lie, asserting that I was an offender. She even attempted to argue that the recordings were illegal and therefore inadmissible. I clarified that they were legal since they were captured by security cameras within my own home, not in a public space. My wife turned to the police urging them to take action, and they did indeed take action against her. She ended up being placed in handcuffs, and her reaction was a tearful outburst akin to that of a child. I could only sit there, shaking my head in disbelief. This woman was once the person I had loved for many years. I believed she was an exceptional, intelligent, and charming individual. It turns out I couldn't have been more mistaken. As the police escorted her away, she shouted that they couldn't treat her this way. However, she didn't put up much resistance, as she likely realized that fighting back would only lead to additional charges of resisting arrest. Subsequently, I took action to close down all her credit cards that were under my name and ceased any future contributions to our joint bank account. This meant she had to rely entirely on her own funds to secure her release from jail. Over the years when she was still working, while the mortgage was solely in my name, she had managed to save a considerable amount of money. Therefore, financial hardship was not her predicament. She returned for her car, and I had taken the initiative to pack some of her suitcases with clothes and belongings. I left the key on the seat so she couldn't re-enter the house. A day after she was released from jail, my wife's parents came to talk to me. At first, they had only heard her version of the story, which was similar to what she had told the police. Her father in particular was ready to confront me. Despite his age, he is quite strong and imposing. However, when I asked him whether he was aware of her affair or pregnancy, he seemed surprised and allowed me to explain. I retrieved the laptop once again to show my in-laws the recorded evidence. Once they discovered the truth, they were appalled and expressed disbelief that this person was their daughter. They offered me an apology and mentioned that they would stay in touch to support me with my kids. They then dialed my wife on speaker right in front of me and directly challenged her lies. She initially tried to maintain her stance, but when they revealed that they were currently with me and had seen the recordings, she changed her tune. They were fully informed and insisted she immediately leave their house. She attempted to backtrack, but my in-laws asserted that they hadn't raised her to be a selfish adulterer who would try to falsely accuse her own husband. She ceased to be their daughter as they disowned her over the phone right then and there. They hung up before my wife could respond, and they disregarded her subsequent attempts to call back. Upon their return home, they found not only that she had left, but also that she had caused damage to several things in their house, which greatly upset my mother-in-law. Despite this, I still consider my ex's parents to be my in-laws as they continue to visit their grandchildren occasionally. My ex is essentially no longer a part of our lives. At a later time, she returned with her affair partner, AP, to gather her belongings. However, AP didn't even enter the house. And my wife avoided speaking to me while collecting her remaining possessions. Aware of the numerous cameras around, she refrained from any other actions that could incriminate her. I wasn't alone during this process, as my sister and brother-in-law, Beal, were there to help keep an eye on her. Beal made sure to monitor AP from the window. While the kids arrived home, my wife was still packing and made no effort to engage with either of them. Even when our youngest child cried out for her, before departing, she removed a few photos of us from our wedding that were hanging on the wall and purposefully broke them on the floor. It seemed like she anticipated a reaction from me, based on the way she looked at me while doing so. Without a word from me, she took her final bags and left through the door. After her departure, I had to reach out to my elderly mother to come and stay with me for a bit, as I couldn't manage taking care of my kids all on my own. With limited time off work and few day care options available, it was a necessary step. I also decided to have DNA tests conducted on my children, even though I was confident they were mine. People advised me to be absolutely sure. Fortunately, The results confirmed that both of my children are indeed mine. I also took the precaution of getting tested for STIs and the results came back clean. So no need for concern there. Around a week later, my wife returned to my doorstep, proposing a clean divorce, under the condition that I agreed as well. This meant she would receive half of our assets if I consented. I declined her offer directly. We had some back-and-forth arguments, during which she more or less admitted that she realized the state's laws were not in her favor. We had met, got engaged, married, and live it our entire lives in this state. There was no escape for her from significant losses unless I agreed to a settlement which I firmly refused. I told her that her affair was a betrayal, not only to me, but also to our kids, her parents, and practically everyone else. I then shut the door in her face. She left without causing a scene, and I didn't see her again until the court proceedings. A few months later, during the divorce court hearing, my wife's visible pregnancy was quite evident. She had acquired a lawyer and app was noticeably absent. I anticipated that she might lie to the judge, which she attempted a few times. However, I had ample video evidence to counter any falsehoods, leaving her with very little chance. Instead, she opted to prolong the divorce proceedings by being uncooperative and making various demands. She started by asking for most of my savings, and a long list of other possessions I owned. She also insisted that I buy her out of her share of the house, despite never contributing to its ownership. On my side, I aimed for full custody of the kids and to remove her name from the house deed. I possessed video evidence supporting her lack of concern for our children and her intention to fabricate lies. My wife's attempts to delay and constantly change her demands didn't sway the judge, who refused to allow the process to drag on. Since we were in an at-fault state, her status as the adulterer entitled her to very little. Her misguided efforts to frame me only worsened her case. In the end, she lost all custody rights to our children, and left with only her personal belongings. A financially equitable settlement given the circumstances and the car I had previously purchased for her. The ownership of the title was in my name, but I transferred it without hesitation as part of the settlement. Throughout the divorce process, she never attempted to communicate with our kids. As a result, I was granted full custody. And now the house is solely mine, granting me complete freedom from her. During and before the divorce, my former wife persistently propagated lies about me to others. However, my sisters spread the truth about her affair, leading mutual friends to distance themselves from her once they learned the facts. Following the divorce, she and her app left town together. I heard that while he wasn't fired, he was relocated where I'm unsure. What I do know is that my ex had to go with him. Their destination could have been anywhere, and it wouldn't have mattered to me. I'm just relieved that they are both gone. By now, my ex should have had the child she wanted as her do-over. I hope it was worth it for her. This is not the type of post I had envisioned sharing on Reddit, especially after discussing my wife's release of a bunny near a hawk. However, the comments I received earlier about her behavior made me realize I should have paid attention to the warning signs long ago. I suppose I maintained an optimistic view of our marriage throughout. Nevertheless, it's all concluded now. To those who managed to read through this, thank you. I understand it was quite a lengthy read, but this is my reality. Edit. I removed my ex's name from the house deed because all the bank records showed that only I had contributed financially. My ex repeatedly argued with the judge, which was not in her favor in a fault-based state, where being a confirmed cheater creates significant problems during a divorce. It's akin to having a signed prenup working against you. When I mentioned getting the toughest lawyer from the law firm, I meant it. This attorney was both aggressive and relentless. The settlement my ex received was $60,000, and she also received the car I had bought new for her a couple of years ago, which had cost me $50,000. The car was fully paid for, and I transferred the title to her. Despite being offered partial custody of our children, my ex ultimately gave up any custody rights willingly. After the video of her stating that she no longer cared about our children came to light, she didn't pursue custody and willingly renounced all rights to our kids. Once she realized she couldn't get her way. For those who might question whether the police would arrest my ex for lying, let me clarify, the local police are quite serious about such matters. My ex, with a sociopathic grin, even tried to falsely accuse me of domestic abuse. That's more than enough for an arrest. I recently found out that my girlfriend, 25 years old, is cheating on me with one of her coworkers. She's unaware that I know, and I'm considering breaking the news to her through a Christmas gift. However, I'm struggling to come up with a suitable idea that doesn't cross any legal boundaries. I apologize for the delayed update, and I'm thankful for the advice I received in the initial post. To provide some context I omitted before, I'll refer to my now ex-girlfriend as Beth. While I am simply myself, my roommate is named Bruce, and the other guy involved will be named later. Bruce and I have been roommates for almost 4 years. About 3 years ago, I began talking to Beth. She used to live in a different state, and that's where we first connected. After a year of communication, we decided she should move to my state for better opportunities and quality of life. She made the move, got a job, and started making friends. Around the end of last year, Bruce and I needed a new place to live. Since our lease was ending, Beth and I began searching for our own place, and we found a near-perfect apartment. This is where the situation starts to take a downturn. A few days around Thanksgiving, I noticed that she was texting non-stop throughout the day. While this isn't unusual due to her group chats with friends both here and back home, what caught my attention was her tech. I asked about it, and she mentioned her friends and someone named Mike. Curious about Mike, as he wasn't among her usual circle, she said she works with him. Moving forward a bit, there came a day when I needed to wake up early to open my store. Swapping phone charges, I saw her phone's backlight activate and reveal a message from that unsaved number. "Hey, beautiful. I just got home." This naturally sparked my interest. The next day, with her working early and me off, I stayed up and drank while she went to bed early. Around 3 a.m., driven by alcohol-fueled curiosity, I couldn't resist any longer. I took her phone to the bathroom. It turned out she had been dishonest for a couple of weeks, talking about them hanging out and cuddling. She even expressed feeling stronger chemistry with him than with anyone else. This revelation took me aback and hurt me deeply. After waiting a couple more days, I looked through her phone again. This time, Beth was talking negatively about my roommate, Bruce. She was arranging to go to Zoo Lights for a date with Mike and his friends. In her messages, she mentioned how she could have left earlier in the year, but she didn't want to mess up the lease for me. She was enduring being with me for a few more months and basically setting things up for this guy to wait while they discussed when they could hang out based on my work schedule. We were still in the process of planning to move to that new place. We had signed the lease, paid the deposit, and were waiting to take control of the property. The morning after reading her messages, I went to the apartments we were going to move into and asked them to cancel our contract. Since we hadn't actually moved in yet, they could cancel it and keep the holding fees we had paid to cancel it. Both of us needed to confirm the cancellation. They had to call her to ask if she was on board with canceling. Here's where I faced a dilemma. How can I cancel this without letting her know I'm aware of her affair? So I fibbed. I called her and said, I found a place that was 3 for the price. Closer to my job and would save to agree to cancel the new lease when they called her. I had to wait because my boss throws an amazing Christmas party every year and he had already arranged for her to be my Pulse one. This party was scheduled for a Sunday, and I almost messed things up by being impatient. On the Saturday before the party, she went out with her friends, which I didn't mind. But then she deliberately ignored me for the entire night. She knew this would make me angry, and that was her intention. Rather than confronting her immediately, I went to Mike's house. His address was in the messages they exchanged and put the love book I had made for her last Christmas into his mailbox. After that, I went to my job and slept on the office floor. Bruce messaged me at 4 a.m. to let me know she had just come home. My intention was for him to find the book when he checked the mail on Monday, but my plan didn't work out. I assume a neighbor saw me putting it and tipped him off. Who checks the mail on Sunday, right? However, on that Sunday morning, Beth texted me after a while, asking why I went to Mike's and gave him her book. I knew she was aware of everything at this point, so I asked her why she thought I would do such a thing. She pretty much responded with, "What do you want to do about it?" I told her to get through the night, enjoy the party, and we could talk about everything the next day. We had a great time at the party, then went to a comedy show and had dinner at a nice restaurant. Everything went smoothly as my coworkers were aware of the situation but behaved themselves. She sensed something was amiss and messaged a friend, expressing her concern that people might know and be judging her. Indeed, they were aware and forming opinions about her. I learned this because she left her Facebook open on the computer we were sharing. Upon returning home, she went to bed early due to her early work schedule, and I proceeded to put my plan into action. I slept in the recliner, and once she left for work in the morning, I went to collect the U-Haul I had arranged for our move. I loaded up my larger belongings and took them to a storage unit. When she got home, realized what had happened and took her cat with her. She left for a friend's house. Beth mentioned that she would return in a few days to collect her belongings. The weekend before Christmas arrived, and she planned to come that Sunday while I was at work to get the rest of her things. I urged her to stay at the house because we needed to have a conversation and sort things out. So on Sunday, she was at the house, doing laundry and waiting for me to finish work. I arrived and casually started helping her fold laundry, making small talk and asking about her cat's time at her friend's house. After finishing the laundry, we moved to the living room where I set up my station to play games during my remaining days in the house. Amidst sorting through wires, I expressed to her that I was relieved she had a place to go and would be taken care of. She reciprocated, mentioning she felt the same way for me. I scoffed at her words and explained that due to this situation, I was essentially without a home. Curious about my situation, she inquired about the other apartment. I admitted that I had lied. To persuade her to cancel the lease we were planning to sign. A brief silence followed, after which she retreated to the bedroom and broke into tears. While she wept, I waited a few minutes until I heard the dryer completed cycle. As her final load of laundry was done, I retrieved it, helped her fold the clothes, and placed them in boxes. Assisting her with her belongings, I ensured she had everything she needed. Before leaving, she double-checked her items. And as she exited, I advised her to drive safely and close the door behind her. The second part of my plan involved the scrapbook she had created for me, fill it with our photographs and concert memorabilia. Originally, I intended to wrap it and deliver it to Mikey's place on Christmas along with a note reading, "If she cheats on me, she'll cheat on you." However, a moment of clarity struck me. Just before she could drive away, I dashed out with the scrapbook I had hidden and knocked on her car window. She rolled it down and I placed the scrapbook on her seat. She mentioned that she had created the scrapbook for me, allowing me to keep it. I simply gazed at her and responded, "I was planning to give it to Mike. but I've already acted poorly enough. Those are your memories. So you should hold on to them. Afterwards, I returned inside. Throughout the last week of December, I focused on work and utilized any available time to move my remaining belongings to storage and clean the apartment before the lease concluded. At present, I'm staying on a friend's couch. Yet I've secured an apartment within my friend's complex. The landlord has confirmed that I can move in within 2 weeks. My relationship with Beth is over. Though I care for her, I can't rely on her trustworthiness. I witnessed her falsehoods to my face for around a month. She was well aware of her actions and only felt remorseful when caught. I'm choosing to move forward. I intend to dedicate time for myself. Shed the weight I gained during our relationship, re-engage in physical activities, rediscover hope once more. This experience truly tested my patience. I discovered patience from within me that I wasn't even aware of having.